Chapter 208 to 210. Whoosh! Rocky kicked the ground, used Soru, and vanished from sight. Well, from the sight of most people present, at least. Charlotte Katakuri, the best observation hockey user after Amon, could clearly see her movements. Rocky's twin swords dashed towards Katakuri's head, but Katakuri himself didn't move from his spot. He used his master-level control over his devil fruit to mold his mochi body as the two blades immediately went through his neck. On the other hand, Rocky's golden eyes shone like a pair of sharingans. She could see the movements of Katakuri's neck as it separated from the rest of the body, letting the swords flow to the other side. Unfortunately, while Rocky's eyes are fast enough to see this, her body wasn't fast enough to change the trajectory of her sword and hit him on another spot. Rocky kicked the ground backwards and jumped back. "Interesting," she said. "It's just like brother. You have great control over your fruit, huh, Katakuri? You're not as incompetent as I thought you are." Katakuri didn't reply. He just narrowed his eyes. Just now, that was close. Her blade moved almost as fast as his ability to control his body. If he didn't have his by his side, it was no mystery that he would have been cut before separating his neck. "I have to take her seriously. She has the power to back up her bounty," Katakuri decided. The next second, his eyes shined red. Vroom! He watched multiple futures with different outcomes, every future based on any attack he chooses. He was again surprised at how the girl in front of him held her spot against each of his attacks. Still, deciding on an attack, Katakuri raised his hand while his forearm got covered in bluish ink-dark armament and became like a balloon as he threw it forward at a terrible speed, making his arms stretch far and reach Rocky. Katakuri was a very fast man. Fast enough for his attack to be unavoidable for a Gear 4th Luffy. Very few people in this world would be able to dodge his attacks. Very few. Whoosh! The fist flew at Rocky's face, but instead of dodging, which she could do, Rocky tossed her swords and raised her own fist as green scales and fur appeared in her whole arm. No sooner had her arm turned green, reddish ink-dark armament hockey covered her arm. With a breath in, she punched forward as her fist came into contact with Katakuri's hockey-coated fist. Bam! Intense shock waves were released from the impact of the punch. While Rocky's arm was firm, Katakuri's whole arm was flickering like water. Katakuri was pushed back as he stumbled upon his legs and almost tripped. He retreated his arm and glared at Rocky using his future sight. Vroom! His vision returned to the present as he realized he had made a mistake. He saw Rocky's fist just in front of his face. He was caught off guard as the fist hit him in the face and threw him back. Katakuri clenched his jaw tight and then spat out a tooth. "She is strong," he acknowledged to himself. "I have to be careful." Meanwhile, I hate Future Sight so much. The users of Future Sight just keeps dodging all attacks. Feels good to finally have landed an attack on you, you mochi bastard. Rocky cracked her knuckles as she stepped on the tooth Katakuri spat out. "I can see why you'd want to fight Mama instead." Katakuri finally said something. "Though you're still far from beating me. If this becomes a stretched-out battle, you'd clearly win, so I should quicken the pace." Katakuri's body split in two as a trident came out of him. He grabbed the middle of the rod and kicked the ground. Blurring towards Rocky, he jabbed his spear forward at Rocky's abdomen. Pchit! Naturally, the defense in untransformed form is lower than her prime defense, so Katakuri didn't have to use Conqueror's coating to penetrate Rocky. "Oh!" Rocky looked down on her stomach with a raised eyebrow. "This hurts less than the time brother hit me in the crotch." Katakuri frowned. He tightened his grip and tried to spin the trident inside Rocky's stomach, but before he could succeed, Rocky's hand landed on above his. Nah, that would probably hurt more. I am not up for it." Rocky shoved her palm vertically towards Katakuri's face, but his face just parted in two as he jumped backwards. Rocky clicked her tongue. "Tsk, you're not that strong, but you're annoying." Katakuri didn't answer and just observed her, seeing which Rocky rolled her eyes. Okay, this is getting boring. Let's finish this quickly. Rocky took the spear out of her stomach while the gap on her abdomen started to heal very slowly. She then took a deep breath. I don't like using this form, but fuck it. Then, just like her left arm, Rocky's right arm also started to transform along with her whole body. First, green scales covered her body, then green feathers sprouted out of the scales. Her hair also changed. It turned golden blonde, just like her eyes. In the end, a pair of red feathers sprouted out of her forehead like horns, while her fangs became more pronounced. This was the feathered serpent, form second. Katakuri was on full alert. He wanted to attack her right now. But the danger she posed in his observation haki was too high. So he settled to trust his observation haki and not attack yet. Huff? Rocky smoked out a breath. Her breath was as soft as her feathers, while her gaze was wise, unlike before. She looked at him with a bored gaze, seeming like a person who has seen everything. It was the gaze of a person who knows everything, a person who has seen it all, a person who can say, "Hey, I am omniscient," and everyone would believe them. Rocky was in that state, an ambiguous form where she was seeing the world differently, more wisely. With her deep gaze, she watched Katakuri observe the future, again and again, finding ways to defeat her. Katakuri kept searching. Every choice he would make, a different future would have happened. But in all the future, he didn't see a way to win, not with his current strength. If he became a mochi donut wheel and rushed towards her, she would rip him apart. If he threw jelly beans at her, they would just bounce off her skin. If he created mochi hands in the hair and punched at her, she would just destroy them all. If he would try to escape, she would kill him using her swords. But if he keeps standing like this, thinking what to do, then... A saturated voice left Rocky's lips. She silently tilted her head and channeled her powers. Soon many small light gates opened all over the battlefield, surrounding Katakuri in a blinding light. Weapons such as swords, spears, gauntlets, chains, katana, cannons, guns made of light appeared out of the gates, pointing at Katakuri. "Behold my gate of Babylon," Rocky mumbled in a dazed voice. "Surrender, Katakuri. Cut your arm off and you can live for today." Reiki seemed strange. Her tone was calm, with no emotion present. But she still spoke like her normal self, albeit in a completely different tone. Katakuri had a frown on his face as he was done calculating all the possibilities of this match. This is a sudden way to die, he thought. Still, I am always prepared for death. This was not out of the realm of possibilities either. In the end, he breathed out and straightened his back. I won't surrender. If I have to die, then it would be filled with pride. Oh, Reiki blinked. After a short silence, she raised her hand. Then goodbye. The weapons rushed out of the gate, very fast, light speed fast. Katakuri saw them all coming. His future sight could see it all. He could clearly see how a spear would hit his thigh. He could see how a bullet would hit him in the arm. He could see how a sword would cut one of his arms off. He would see how a scythe would cut his head off. He could see them all. But he, Charlotte Katakuri, wasn't fast enough to dodge light. Chick, chack, chick, chack. Weapons of light penetrated Charlotte Katakuri's body as he stood in his spot, blood trailing down his body, slowly as he breathed out his last air. Meanwhile, oh, he is dead. Rocky looked at the man standing on his feet with her head tilted. Should I have done that? It was then as she blinked multiple times. Her feather disappeared, her scales disappeared, as her body returned to normal. The fuck? Her voice returned to normal too. Rocky can't control her hybrid form. Something happens to her wisdom eyes that makes her perspective on the world a little different and her mind a little numb. She doesn't use that form often because of that particular side effect. But since she was getting annoyed at Katakuri's constant dodges, she was forced to use it. The result? Oops, I wasn't supposed to kill him. Katakuri is dead. Welp, peace was never an option. Amon would laugh at this. Things got a little messed up on her end, Rocky realized after coming out of her daze. This is bad, right? It probably is. But She stood over the body of Katakuri that had fallen on its back after being riddled by the countless weapons made of light. The weapons had vanished, dissipated in the atmosphere, so Katakuri's body was a mess of holes. It's been around a month since brother went to Alabasta, Rocky muttered. Let's hope he doesn't come back before Big Mom comes for revenge, heh? Rocky recalled Big Mom was called the world's strongest hag. But in truth, she was basically the strongest among all the women, too. This meant something, an opportunity. While Rocky's primary ambition was to follow her brother, she also hoped to be renowned as the strongest swordswoman and strongest woman in general, too, because only by being the strongest, Rocky would be able to stand beside her brother. Or so she believed. Unfortunately, the swordsman thing can be done later. Let's kill Big Mom for now. Heh. Big Mom was the strongest for a reason that Rocky wouldn't be able to overcome anytime soon. Let's go! It took less than an hour for the news to reach Big Mom. Unsurprisingly, her rage was beyond the roof. While she didn't love most of her children, Katakuri wasn't among them. Other than that, he was also her second in command. His death would deliver the Big Mom pirates a big hit. Perospero! The haki of a supreme king had burst out of her. All the civilians and most of her own children had already lost their consciousness. The snake dared to bite back. Time to behead it. Charlotte Linlin, a.k.a. the strongest woman alive right now, was enraged. For the first time in 2 decades, something other than sweets has enraged her this much. She wore Prometheus on her head, Zeus was under her feet, and Napoleon was on her hand. This wasn't the Big Mom who Luffy fought. She was still moderately sane. Her mind was focused on one thing: killing the snake. Today, she was the envoy of death for anyone who would dare oppose her, not like there were many. On a lifeless island of New World. Hey! Stop! I am here! Hey! At the shore of the island, a girl was screaming on top of her lungs while waving her hand towards a ship barely visible at the far sea. From the looks of it, the ship hasn't even noticed her. She was wearing a sleeveless white garment with a diamond-shaped design on both sides and an indigo wisp-patterned bottom half. If a professional tailor saw this, he would be able to recognize that garment was originally a sleeved kimono with long white sleeves, but were later ripped off, leaving the garment sleeveless and making it more battle-fitting. Ah! Why did he leave me on this island? The girl groaned and rubbed her temple. This was Yamato, Kaido's daughter. The person who, in this timeline, decided to be trained by Kaido after the changes made by Amon. He even made me eat a devil fruit. Now I can't just swim out of this island. Unlike canon, Kaido gave her the mythical Zoan devil fruit by himself. How am I supposed to find Ace at this rate? She fell on her butt and moved her head up towards the sky. There was a huge white cloud floating over her head. She imagined Odin's face on the cloud as her fist curled up. She slammed the ground, forming a crater, and gritted her teeth. No, I can't break down. She mumbled under her breath. I need the dairy back. I need to give that to Momonosuke after he returns. I wouldn't be Odin if I can't get it back. She clenched her jaws. Let's try my devil fruit. There must be a reason why Kaido gave this to me. With a grit of her teeth, she got up back on her foot. Her desperate eyes turned sharp. You shouldn't, Rocky pleaded while her hands were locked on Robin's neck. I'm saying brother permitted me. He said I can fight Big Mom. You don't need to call him and let him know about this. Listen to me, Robinin. Stop acting childish, will you? Robin kept frowning at her. Show me proof. A smile came onto Rocky's face. Here. She took out her smart dial and fudged with some apps. Soon, Amon's voice came out of it. Pfft, sure. Just don't get yourself killed. If you do, don't expect me to revive you or something. I don't have actual godly powers yet. She has used the useful record feature of the smart dial. The reason being she wanted to show Robin the recording, and she loved what Amon said. Robin listened to the recording while blinking. Rocky grinned. So? Robin stared at her face. After a short silence, she nodded. Fine. Do as you please. But like he said, don't get killed. Hey. Rocky leaned and kissed Robin on the cheeks. Thanks. Robin sighed and shook her head as Rocky canceled the hug and jumped in the bed. Also, I am calling the others. You can't fight all of the Big Mom pirates at once. Robin added and took out her own smart dial. Do it. I know my limits. Reiki agreed too. Just don't tell brother. I am worried that he will change his mind and ruin my opportunity. Seeing Robin nodding helplessly, Rocky's lips curled up. Maybe I can become the strongest woman before he becomes the strongest man. Good. She rolled on the bed. She was excited about the battle. It would probably take another week for Big Mom to reach this island. So, she has time to prepare a little. Unlike how people might think, unlike how people would believe, Rocky wasn't being dumb. She knows this would be hard. She knows her limit. She knows where she stands, and she also knows Big Mom is an emperor of the sea for a reason. Rocky even knows she might die. But is a life without any risk still considered living? It's been a week. Big Mom has reached the Suzdal Kingdom. Her rage hadn't diminished in the past 7 days. In fact, it had only increased more after she saw the destroyed Yashuk Kingdom on her way here. Big Mom's skin was itching. Her body was shaking with rage. Her pupils were trembling. She was impatient to behead the giant reptile that killed her favorite son. The whole crew was silent. They were nervous. In their whole life, they hadn't seen their mother this enraged. Some of them questioned, would she feel the same way if they were killed? Or was it only because the victim was Katakuri? They let their imagination run around that question, because nobody was brave enough to try it out, or ask Linlin face to face. Big Mom has bought only the strongest of her crew. First, the 3 of the remaining sweet commanders, Smoothie, Cracker, and Snack. Then, there was Perospero, Daifuku, Oven, and Brûlée. They were the strongest on the ship. There were a lot more on the ship, but they weren't strong enough to make a note for. From Perospero's perspective, things were going downhill. While he was also very angry that his younger brother had been killed, he was thinking a bit politically instead. Now that Katakuri was gone, after Big Mom's death in a few decades, only he would be eligible enough to take over the BM pirates. Kind of selfish, he knew, but it was what it was. Perospero! Hearing Big Mom's call, Perospero turned to face her. Are we there yet? He checked the horizon with a pair of binoculars and said, Yes, Mama. It should take 1 to 2 hours. Parolin. Oh, good. Big Mom clenched her fist and turned to face her children. We will start attacking from the shore, destroy everything and kill everyone, including civilians. Yes, Mama. Everyone agreed with her. It would be a killing spree, or would it? Zzz! Cough, mist, smoke, or fog, unclear of the exact word, started to engulf the area, the whole sea. The majority of the Charlotte family started to cough. Wait, where is this mist coming from? Something was wrong. At the shore, dup, 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 dup. The sea was boiling. Bubbles of hot water were exploding up and down in the sea. Steam was being released, covering the whole area in a veil of fog. The whole area was hot. Not unbearable for strong people, but pretty suffocating for people below a certain level of power. Oof, this is itching my skin. Reiki groaned. Wiper, tone it down a little. Wiper had his hands dipping under the water. He was the source of the heat, the fog, the boiling sea. Shut up and bear with it. Wiper scoffed. He was salty because he couldn't fight that katakuri. Now he wanted to fight Big Mom, but he knows his limit. Unlike a certain someone, he would be happy killing the other sweet commanders and help Rocky focus on Big Mom. He was at least confident enough for that. He would let the others handle the mobs. Yes, all the sins are here, who were standing beside and behind Wiper, along with a few more. Yo-ho-ho, Rocky-san, you can always clean yourself in a hot bath, you know. The skeleton, Brooke, laughed. Perhaps I can even help you take a bath. Ah! Don't move your mouth too much or it will come off. Rocky glared at him after punching him on the shoulder. Brooke has been with Yona since 2 years ago when Amon first helped him from Moria's clutch. He's been the vice warden of the new thriller bark ever since. If not for the fact that he was positioned in that role, he would have been the seventh sin. Ah, I can see them, a robotic voice said. It was Short Motor, the automata. Even in this foggy area, his robotic pupil rotated, zooming in the front. He observed the ship that was just a few hundred meters away. So do we attack right now? Brooke broke the silence that had fallen upon the sins. No, Tsumi answered. Let them come down here. Drowning them won't be as fun. Hey, Reiki raised an eyebrow. I don't think they'd be drowned to begin with. Before Tsumi could ask what Rocky meant, the sea in front of them got covered by something that soon turned hard solid, thus practically freezing the sea. Charlotte Perospero. Nobody had to ask for what happened, as Short Motor started to spit out information stored in his memory. Eldest child of Big Mom. He has the paramecia, lick-lick devil fruit, using which he can create any type of candy. Likewise, he has used his powers to create a thick and solid layer above the sea surface, most likely noticing us. Good job, Motor. Reiki slowly took out her swords. And yes, they indeed noticed us, or the mist wouldn't just start vanishing. Yes, the mist had started to clear up. Soon, the figure of a huge ball of cloud with eyes, nose, and a mouth became visible in the air. Short Motor didn't need to explain how the cloud must have sucked in all the mist, since the sins were at least smart enough to decode that. Other than that, they weren't in a state to listen to Short Motor's explanation either because, "Where are you, little snake?" A hungry predator was in the same sky, standing above the cloud. Zeus. Reiki narrowed her eyes as she moved her swords in front of her in a cross shape, seemingly wanting to defend against an attack. Unsurprisingly, the predator had recognized her prey and had rushed towards her. Big Mom had Napoleon on her arm as she prepared to swing it. Raising it in the air, she charged her attack. "Watch out for the Spear of Elbaf!" Big Mom yelled as a shockwave surrounded Napoleon. She swung her sword down. "Pow!" An array of pink shockwave rushed towards the 6 sins, Brooke and Short Motor. But, Sky Sword style, Form 0. Reiki's arms buffed up, green feathers covering them in less than a second. At the same time, her golden eyes shone. They shone as bright as the sun. Copy technique, Ikoku sovereignty. Reiki swung her swords. A smaller but similar ray of shockwave left her swords and went to clash with the power of a homie. Boomba-am! How will this fight end? Reiki wasn't so sure anymore.